from the heart of the city too busy to hate. A progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is The Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Hello, and thank you for listening. Whether it's on Georgia Now, weekdays 4 to 6 p.m., 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn, the replay on Georgia Now the following morning, 8 to 10 a.m., or via podcast. I'm just glad that you've tuned in. I really do appreciate that. It's humbling. It honors me. Here we are, another election day. Because we don't have ranked choice voting and because folks can't get their minds around ranked choice voting, we have another election day with runoffs in the city of Atlanta, for example, a couple of city council races, a couple of school board seats. School board seats are up for grabs. We've got a House District 106 race between a couple of Democrats for that seat, that vacant seat. And, of course, all eyes are on Tennessee for a congressional seat that is unlikely to flip, but it may wind up being closer than anticipated anyway. A little quick audio from CBS News covering that special race in Tennessee.
Happening today in Tennessee, a special election to fill an empty seat in the U.S. House. On the right, Republican Matt Van Epps. On the left, Democrat Afton Bain. The district in play is one President Trump carried, by the way, by more than 20 points in last year's election. But get this, yesterday, both candidates saw some new polling, and they made these closing arguments to voters.
I think voters are feeling that this Washington Republican economic agenda has not delivered, and that we have a Republican trifecta at the state level, we have a Republican trifecta at the federal level, and groceries aren't cheaper, utilities aren't cheaper, rent isn't cheaper.
We're going to win decisively tomorrow when everyone gets out to vote, and that's what we're driving first. This is about America first. As the speaker said, the margins in Congress are so narrow, and this is about the direction we want to move our country.
All right, so let's look at some polling. Emerson College shows Republican Matt Van Epps has a 2% lead. But consider this.
That's it?
5% of respondents say they are undecided. So it's a dogfight. President Trump knows this. He made a push for the Republican candidate. He cheered him on social media and also called in to a Van Epps rally last night.
I have to say the whole world is watching. This is a big deal because right now we're like 3 votes up on the radical left, and this would be a wonderful victory for us. It'll be really a positive sign.
Would there be anything more that stirs up the base and maybe some disaffected folks on the margins, some centrists, some independents, some other on the far left, so never Trump? Is there anything more that would stir up those folks to show up to vote in this special election other than hearing his voice and knowing that a vote for the Democrat on the ticket is a vote against Donald Trump? I'm not so sure if I were the candidate that I would want Donald Trump calling in to my last-minute rally, honestly. But, hey, you do you, bro. Incidentally, this district, not unlike some of the districts that border Tennessee here in the state of Georgia, 2 congressional districts that come to mind, District 14, Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, which is suddenly in flux, obviously, and the 9th congressional district, currently held by Republican Andrew Clyde. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to you, and I've been a straight shooter from the jump, that winning either one of those districts for Democrats is a tough pull. However, we do have a good candidate in the 14th congressional district. We had him on last week, Sean Harris, upon waking up over the weekend before that Marjorie Taylor Greene was not only not going to run for that seat in 2026, she was stepping down in January. So, Georgians, yes, another special election coming soon. And we still don't have a date on that. I'm sure the governor will get around to it when he feels like it. But in the 9th congressional district, again, a red-leaning district, but it's a very gerrymandered district where, not unlike Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, it has some Atlanta suburbs and Gainesville and Athens suburbs kind of baked into it. But it is otherwise, in those 12 counties, it is right-leaning. I'd say like 57-42 right-leaning, sort of, usually. However, there is a good candidate who, so far, is unopposed on the Democratic side, meaning he has yet to draw a primary opponent. So we invited him on. His name is Nick Alex. He and his wife, Debbie, and their dog, a little dog too. Actually, it's a big dog, big, beautiful white dog. Used to live in Metro Atlanta. They moved up to Rabun County a couple of years ago near Clayton, my favorite mountain town in North Georgia, by the way. No disrespect to Loniga, Blue Ridge, love y'all, but Clayton. Anyway, I'll have him on. He's going to come on to talk about that race and a little bit about the district itself. He has covered. I mean, it's a lot of turf, like literally, geographically, a lot of turf. And while he does have most of the voters that he needs to get on his side live in Metro Atlanta, Metro Gainesville, like he still needs to go out there, do exactly what I've said since I launched this show in 2022 and I was talking to the Abrams campaign. I mean, through the show, not like in person. You got to go out to these drive-through counties. You got to win over hearts and minds. You have to at least show up, show people that you're not the caricaturization that right-wing talk radio and Fox News has made of you, so that folks know that, okay, so she, actual breathing human being, not a fire-breathing dragon who's coming to, snatch my kid out of 5th grade and take them to get gender reassignment surgery. People believe this kind of nonsense, and I'm not trying to just say that about folks in rural parts of Georgia. There are folks who showed up at your Thanksgiving table who really think that that's exactly what would have happened if Kamala Harris had become president of the United States. Do they live in the rural parts of any? Well, maybe they do. I don't know. Nonetheless, Nick Alex will join the show, so we'll have that conversation about his chances. And again, Trump said it right. All eyes are on Tennessee, including yours, including mine. I do not anticipate this flipping, and I don't mean to be pessimistic. I'm just looking at some real data here. In fact, I saw this. I'm trying to remember which service I snatched this from, and I don't remember. Oh, Time Magazine. To be sure, Democrats are aware they're still talking about Tennessee privately. They're passing around internal polling that shows them between 7 and 10 points down, losing, but maybe possibly within striking distance of a potential upset if lightning strikes. And I will say this. There was some severe weather that moved through in that district. I know that because it was attached to a weather front that actually pummeled Atlanta this morning. I'd say pummeled. It was just a heavy downpour and some thunder and yada, yada, yada. You never know what, and it's, chilly and drab and what. So, I mean, you're already dealing with a special election that's going to have low turnout. And it matters, I guess, which side is more energized. Now, which side would you guess at this point in time politically is more energized? The Trump MAGA hasn't dealt with inflation, consumer prices going up, and manufacturing on the decline, and tariffs eating into our wallets, or the left that, again, sees polling that shows within striking distance could flip this seat. And, oh, by the way, there's only like a 3-vote gap, and we can even narrow that gap by a third with just this one special election. I tend to think I know which side has the enthusiasm. Anyway, we'll put a pin in that. We'll, of course, recap the special election results throughout the state of Georgia as well tomorrow. I want to turn our attention towards the Caribbean. Why? Because it's 50 degrees and it's raining, and it's not going to see a high of 60 for weeks. No, that's not why. Obviously, the DUI hire ahead of the Department of the Department of War has been scrutinized rather heavily of late again, this time for allegedly giving command to make a second strike on an already collapsed, bombed, capsized, destroyed boat with people still flailing in the water. A war crime. Also against our own code. Nonetheless, Pete Hegseth in a cabinet meeting today sitting next to the big boss. Let's listen in on that.
We'll start with Pete, and then if you want, we'll take some questions at the end. Please, Pete.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. As you said, it has been a historic year at the Department of War. Recruiting and retention over this year are at the most historic levels our country has ever seen.
As far as we know.
When I had a chance to be on a aircraft carrier destroyer over Thanksgiving, the spirit in our ranks since the election under President Trump is unprecedented. I've never seen anything like it as a soldier myself in uniform. Yeah. And I know a lot of you feel the same way. We've ripped out the DEI and the political correctness. It's all merit-based at the department. We're getting back to basics: accountability, training, readiness, lethality, and that's reviving that spirit.
I'm not so sure I'd want to be bringing up lethality at this point in time, but DUI hire did.
Mr. President, we're rebuilding the military, historic investments. I just took briefings on the Golden Dome and F-47, next generation capabilities that are going to make sure that for generations to come, America has the most powerful, most capable, most lethal military in the world, which you have rebuilt once and we're rebuilding again. And then we're reestablishing deterrence and credibility. If you look at what happened, we deal with every day the outcome of what happened in Afghanistan, the debacle under Joe Biden. We just dealt with it in the streets of Washington, D.C.
I'm happy to have the Secretary of War on my show to debate that. Because, again, I think going back to when Trump was negotiating with the Taliban in Trump 1.0, thus not only bringing them to the table in those negotiations to withdraw from Afghanistan, legitimizing them again after 2 decades of our investments and lives lost and limbs lost and trillions spent to delegitimize the Taliban, to send them scurrying, to send them scattering, and then releasing 5,000 of their prisoners, thus strengthening them again so that they could topple the Afghan government we spent 2 decades propping up, building up. But, okay, fine. You want to make the argument that it was the withdrawal strategy that Joe Biden inherited from the Trump administration that was flawed from the jump. Otherwise, Biden wouldn't have had to ask for an extension once, got it, ask for it again, didn't get it, and had to hurriedly get folks out of there. Everything with this tribe is blame Biden.
With those 2 National Guardsmen. And then what happened on October 7th with Hamas, what happened in Ukraine, a war that never would have started under President Trump.
Sure.
We're having to rebuild that. So whether it's freedom of navigation and taking the fight to the Houthis, whether it's Midnight Hammer, those beautiful B-2s going 37 hours back and forth, undetected, delivering with precision, and Iran not getting nuclear capabilities, Europe and NATO stepping up to 5%, locking down our southwest border. It's been an honor to work with Christy and Tom and everyone else down there to lock it to 0, operational control of our border. And then it's getting after and going after narco-terrorists and designated terrorist organizations in our own hemisphere.
Yeah, about that.
As I've said, and I'll say again, we've only just begun striking narco boats and putting narco-terrorists at the bottom of the ocean because they've been poisoning the American people. And Joe Biden tried to approach it with kid gloves.
I mean, I would suggest we take a shot every time he mentions Joe Biden, but it's Pete Hegseth. I wouldn't suggest he take any shots.
And allow them to come across the border, cartels take over community, 20 million people, hundreds of thousands of Americans poisoned.
Mr. Hegseth, do you have any comments about the recently pardoned former president of Honduras that actually filled the streets of the United States with millions of grams of cocaine over his reign? No, you don't want to talk about that a bit.
And President Trump said, no, we're taking the gloves off.
We're pardoning the drug kingpin that used to be the president of Honduras.
We're taking the fight to these designated terror organizations, and it's exactly what we're doing. So we're stopping the drugs, we're striking the boats, we're defeating narco-terrorists, and we're standing...
And you may say one thing, that drugs coming in through the sea by sea are down 91%.
Where are these data coming
and
from?
I don't know who the 9% is.
I'm not sure either, sir, because...
But down 91% by sea.
We've had a bit of a pause because it's hard to find boats to strike right now, which is the entire point, right? Deterrence has to matter, not arrest and hand over and then do it again, the rinse and repeat approach of previous administrations. This is meant to get after that approach. And I will just end by saying, as President Trump always has our back, we always have the back of our commanders who are making decisions in difficult situations, and we do in this case and all these strikes.
The illegal ones.
They're making judgment calls and ensuring that they defend the American people. They've done the right things. We'll keep doing that, and we have their backs, Mr. President.
Good job. Thank you very much.
There's actually a Georgia connection to this, and we didn't really pick up on it until, well, just recently. It just kind of dawned on me that, oh, wait a minute. Anyway, we'll discuss when the Ron Show returns. Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. It was a month ago. Reading from Just the News, Natalia Mittelstad reporting that Admiral Alvin Halsey, this was a month ago, Admiral Alvin Halsey retiring just 1 year into his tenure as the commander of U.S. Southern Command, which is responsible for forces in the Caribbean. The announcement came days after the U.S. military conducted its 5th strike on a boat allegedly trafficking drugs off the coast of Venezuela, killing 6 people. A month ago, he stepped down. Literally early November, just weeks after the alleged double strike boat strike in September in the Caribbean. It's been an honor to serve our nation, the American people, and support and defend the Constitution for over 37 years, Halsey said in a social media post in which he also said his official retirement date will be December 12th. So he's got 10 more days on the job. Just go ahead and start timer now. 10 more days on the job. In which case, maybe later we find out more from Admiral Alvin Halsey, who, by the way, is a good man. He's a Morehouse man from Fort Valley, Georgia, and a Morehouse graduate. That's it. That's the connection. That's the Georgia connection I wanted to make in this story. And I cannot wait. In fact, I've already reached out to assure myself that, if and when he's ready to talk to media, yours truly might be able to have that sit down. Looking forward to that. I hope it happens. Back to the Just the News article. Natalia, what was her name again? Mittelstadt, reporting that the announcement also came one day after President Trump said publicly that he had authorized the CIA to operate inside Venezuela to clamp down on the influx of drugs and illegal immigrants. Also on Wednesday back in November, for more than 4 hours, U.S. Air Force B-52 bombers flew off the coast of Venezuela, according to CNN. Two unnamed sources told CNN that there had been tensions between Hegseth and Halsey for weeks before the retirement announcement. Now, what was it that happened weeks before November? Could it have been the double strike? Back to the article. Hegseth believed Halsey wasn't moving quickly or aggressively enough to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean, and said he wasn't being given the information he needed about the operations, according to the sources. However, Southcom was concerned about the lawfulness of the operations, the sources said. During an October 6th meeting at the Pentagon, tensions came to a head at a meeting between Hegseth, Halsey, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, according to the sources. At the meeting, Halsey offered to resign, but the idea was tabled, and his departure was not announced until Thursday, according to a source. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell on Thursday reposted on X, that's official government channels, a report from the New York Times that claimed an official, quote, said that Admiral Halsey had raised concerns about the mission and the attacks on the alleged drug boats. Parnell denied the allegation, saying, quote, this is total lie. Never happened. There was no hesitation or concerns about the mission. Just more fake news. Secretary Hegseth tweeting back then, on behalf of the Department of War, we extend our deepest gratitude to Admiral Alvin Halsey for his more than 37 years of distinguished service to our nation as he plans to retire at year's end. To review, it was just a month ago that Morehouse grad, Fort Valley's native son, Admiral Alvin Halsey, announced that he was going to retire, which he will in 10 days. And he did it just weeks after tensions allegedly ratcheted up. Let me go back and read to you again. Two unnamed sources told CNN that there had been tensions between Secretary of War Hegseth and Halsey for weeks before the retirement announcement. I mean, that could be early, mid-October. That could be late September. This double strike allegedly happened in September. And also, again, let me reiterate, Hegseth believed Halsey wasn't moving quickly or aggressively enough, underline, to combat drug traffickers in the Caribbean, and said he wasn't being given the information he needed about the operations, according to sources. However, Southcom was concerned about the lawfulness, highlighter, of the operation, according to sources. Over to Politico, where Jacob Wendler had been reporting 2 days ago. Lawmakers from both parties raised alarm Sunday that Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth may have committed a war crime following a report that he ordered a follow-on attack to kill survivors of a boat strike in September. Remember now, we don't even know for a fact. I mean, apparently the Department of the DOW, they know better than we do, I guess, what was on these fishing boats, even though they're obliterated and there's like nothing to, what do you find, right? If the bodies are on the bottom of the ocean, whatever contraband has to be as well, right? Washington Post reported last week that Hegseth authorized a highly unusual strike to kill all survivors of one of the Trump administration's attacks in recent months on boats allegedly carrying drugs, in international waters. Skipping down to the bipartisan tone of this, Senators Chris Van Hollen, Democrat of Maryland, Tim Kaine, Democrat of Virginia, both of whom sit on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, said Sunday that, if accurate, such orders would rise to the level of war crimes. Add to that, Senator Mark Kelly, Democrat of Arizona, if true, clearly not lawful. Senator Ed Markey, Democrat Massachusetts. Pete Hegseth is a war criminal and should be fired immediately. Bipartisan leadership of the Armed Services Committee in both chambers vowed to probe the matter, with Senators Roger Wicker of Mississippi, Jack Reed of Rhode Island promising vigorous oversight to determine the facts related to these circumstances on Friday. The former a Republican, the latter a Democrat. Add to that, Republican Representative Mike Turner from Ohio, who told Nancy Cordes on Face the Nation Sunday that, quote, if that occurred, that would be very serious, and I agree that would be an illegal act. Representative Don Bacon, Republican Nebraska, said on ABC This Week that if it was as if the article said, that is a violation of the law of war. Remember the first Trump presidency? We had like a bingo card of the cabinet officials and how soon they'd step down. You probably had RFK circled, right? You may need to reconsider. It's The Ron Show. Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
Follow The Ron Show on Instagram at Ron Show Radio.
Joining me from the lovely 9th Congressional District, and I do mean that in all sincerity, Nick Alex running for the 9th Congressional District on the 2026 ballot, running as a Democrat. And I be honest with you, if I could do as you and your wife have done and move to Northeast Georgia, that's exactly where I would go. I love it up there, man. Tallulah Gorge, Tallulah Falls, Clayton, Georgia. Man, that's just my haunts. Like when I want to get out of town, that's where I want to go. There's so many hikes. The colors are great this time of year. You've got waterfalls all over the place, cool little towns, great little restaurants in those cool little towns. What is it? There's the goat farm. It's like the goat farm, but there's like the goats on the roof. That's what it is. I mean, I can sit here and talk about your district. Well, at least that area of that district for hours.
Yeah, it's wonderful. It's wonderful to live in the northern part of it. As a congressional district, it's a nightmare because it's been gerrymandered right in a horrible way, which we can talk about later. But it includes, as I've gotten to know it, it includes places I love, which you just described, North Georgia. I'm up here at the northeast corner of the state, and across the street from my house is National Forest, which hopefully the Trump administration won't touch, but you never really know, do you? Mm-hmm. But it's gorgeous up here. It goes all, it's kind of like a scorpion. It goes from Gilmer County, up through the northern part of the state. I know you talked to Sean Harris, recently, and his district would be just to the left of mine, right, just to the west. But then it goes down through Hall County, where they gerrymandered Hall County, cut it in half, and I have the eastern half of it, and then it goes all the way down to North Gwinnett.
It's crazy. Yeah. I mean, you get a lot of suburban Atlanta, Gainesville, Athens, but not the actual Gainesville, Atlanta, Athens. So it's very much gerrymandered. It's I would say like an R plus maybe 12, 14 district. So it's an uphill slog. Yeah. But I'm sure like many folks across the country today, you're watching the special election in Tennessee just to kind of get a gauge of what could turn up there and what that may bode for your race too.
I am. I'm watching it very carefully, and all the things that are going on concurrently, right, with these extrajudicial killings and the Epstein files and the increase in premiums for Affordable Care Act policies. There's so much noise that I want to see how that really adds up to a contrarian vote against the administration, because that's what it'll take to win the 9th district. The wonderful thing about running in the 9th district is that I have somebody who's almost as evil as Marjorie Taylor Greene, but he's also kind of quiet and lurking. Right. He's not well known within the district, and he's not often seen in the district. Mm-hmm. So I'm out there. So what I've been doing since I started this campaign in April. And because we knew that if we were going to beat Andrew Clyde, we would have to start early, run hard, and run hot. So we've built up an organization. I've traveled about 5,200 miles. I've gone to over 55 different political events. Been talking to voters, and really starting to get my my sense for what the district really needs. And like you said, it's a beautiful district, but it suffers from the same problems that we've been seeing everywhere else, right? Affordability. I built my platform out probably in June of this year after listening for the first 60 days, and affordability, protecting critical government services like ACA and Medicaid, as well as Medicare, and then rule of law were my three planks, if you will. And those apply to all of these counties, all 12 of there's 12 counties in the 9th district. And there's affordability issues, housing issues in each and every one of them. So it's really been amazing to see how it all came together. I'm sorry, I kind of got off on a rant there.
No, it's okay. It's good to have you on the show. That's nice warm up. No, seriously, you when you started talking about affordability and services, if memory serves, there is a hospital in your district that is ceasing their labor and delivery services, and so healthcare is vitally important in rural Georgia, and the state's lack of Medicaid expansion for the last available time, I guess it's been since 2010, directly impacts a lot of folks in your district. But it's difficult to convey that message to folks who have sometimes multi-generational baked-in bias from always seeing one party as superior to the other. How do you combat that in that district? It's not an overnight thing, right?
No, it's not. There's a general building of trust. We've so far talked to a lot of Democratic audiences because that's how you kind of start, right?
Sure.
And we wanted to make sure we didn't have to, we wanted to do everything we could to earn the right to not have a primary. And we think we've done that. By traveling to so many places for so many miles for so many hours, we're trying to build up the trust in the party that we're the right combination, that a Democrat, a relatively moderate Democrat, and I talk about what makes me moderate, is the right fit for this district. And that, the way I put it is that voters ought to diversify their political portfolio. And, when you're investing for your retirement, they say you should diversify your portfolio. I think if you voted for Trump last year, okay, then why don't you put a Democrat in there to diversify your mix, because an unchecked Trump is a very dangerous thing. Why don't you have a moderate Democrat as kind of a counterbalance? Because we need somebody to be doing oversight over the Trump administration. We need somebody to be protecting government services. We need to be somebody to overseeing the military, the way that we've seen it misbehave recently, not misbehave, but have to take actions. So we're building trust by talking to our voters and getting used to the idea of, yes, you can trust a moderate Democrat, and it'd be a nice thing to have to counterbalance a Republican administration. The other thing that we're seeing a lot, Ron, on the road is people who come up to me, they'll say, I feel like I had to come to this event because my party's moved away from me. I stayed where I was politically, but the party has moved away from me. And, I haven't left the party left me.
Well, let me ask you for clarification on that. Are you talking about Democrats who feel like the party moved away from them, or Republicans who feel like their party has moved from them?
I'm sorry, I should have been much more clear. Republicans feel like the Republican Party has moved away from them.
Sure.
When you go into a district that's dominant, historically has been a dominant Republican district. I find that the Democrats who are living in the district are pretty quick to come around to our message, but Republicans, are different. They'll stay after at my rallies or at my events, and they'll say, "Tell me more about why I can trust you, because I think my party, the Republican Party, has moved away from me, and I'm thinking about voting for a Democrat." And so there's a lot of that. There's a lot of this kind of buyer's remorse that I hear about afterwards. On the road, it's coming up on my social media sites. So there's buyer remorse, and that's where I kind of not kid around, but sort of suggest an alternative, which is, why don't you have a moderate Democrat as your local congressman, and you've got the Trump administration in Washington, and there should be a check and balance, right?
Mm.
So there's a lot of that going on. We also know, Ron, that we just recently began to do our own analytics on the state. The state will let you buy data from the Secretary of State, and we can see that in this district, about 30% of the voters didn't vote in the last election.
Right.
30% of the voters they were registered but did not vote. And what I find is a lot of those voters who are also coming to our rallies are in that same that conundrum, which is they feel like it wasn't worth the choice between what they had, in the last election to even bother to come out and vote. And so we're trying to say, with what you've seen the Trump administration do in the first 9 months of its reign, why don't you consider having a Democratic congressman that helps you represent your values better? So we're seeing both these registered non-voters coming to our rallies and these kind of disaffected Republicans. And it's going to take that combination of voters to win in this next election.
Would you also be willing to concede, because this is something that I've harped on a lot, especially in 2024? Would you be willing to concede, and in 2022, to concede that some of the candidates atop the ticket? For me, it was Stacey Abrams in 2022 that actually kind of goaded me into even starting this show, because I felt like Ms. Abrams was not going to all corners of Georgia to get as many votes as possible in some of those drive-through flyover counties. And I think the same was something that, and granted, she had a little more than 100 days to campaign, but the Harris Walz campaign famously came to Georgia to do a South Georgia bus tour, and it was Savannah and the suburbs. It wasn't South Georgia. But would you be willing to concede that sometimes Democrats at the state and at the national level just haven't given voters in areas like yours the opportunity to shake hands with a candidate, to ruin the caricaturization that's built up on the right, to actually figure out, well, they're a human being, their pulse felt strong, their handshake was warm, and they're real human beings. Maybe I should consider voting for them.
I think you're right. I think that's a big factor, and it even plays out in my district, right? I've been to Banks. I've been to all 12 counties a couple of times, and some of them I've been to 6, 8, 10 times. I practically live in North Gwinnett right now. I go to Swanee, Sugar Hill, Lawrenceville, Tequila, but because that's where the majority of our population is. But even those areas have not gotten the kind of attention that they would like to have in the past. And I think you're right. The boogeyman that is portrayed on Fox of what a Democrat might be is very different, I think, than the reality of when I go into these places and get a chance to meet voters. So I think and part of what I try to bring across, and I believe in my heart, is that I'm a genuine person. I have no other motive in running other than to want to serve my district. I'm a retired banker. I work for Bank of America and Truist Bank predominantly in my career. And learned how to run big organizations and learn how to, play politics, so to speak, in those big organizations. But other than that, I have, I'm fully retired and, have a relatively simple retirement and no other motive to run other than to help our district. So I think that comes across when I talk to people, and they're a little bit shocked. Like, you seem like a genuine person. You seem like a normal person.
Yeah.
I've had a number. I mean, you can be surprised how often I hear that.
Yeah, you're supposed to be slaughtering babies and dragging 13-year-olds to transition surgeries, right? I mean, that's right. That's the boogeyman that you're up against, literally, in some of these pockets.
It is literally, and there are going to be some people I can't convince, but there are many people who, after I talk with them, and it's really encouraging to see people come out for these events and then stay after and talk. But when they meet you, they realize you're not the boogeyman. And I think the party in the past hasn't had the reach. We've been trying to reach every county, and we're working through organizations now that we're shifting into organizations like Indivisible, who will invite Republicans, who will invite independents. And I'd like to do more and more of that over time. But it's been hard there isn't really even the infrastructure to do this,
Yeah.
We recently met with the one of the field operations leaders for Ossoff, for John Ossoff, and we've essentially offered to try to partner with them to be in the field representing both ourselves and the Ossoff campaign.
That's very wise. It's very wise. For one, I always pictured, and I had an interview with Charlie Bailey last summer when he became the state party chair about campaigns co-opting. Like, you can be on a yard sign on one side and Ossoff on the other. I mean, that is a simple way to share resources and get both names out there. And that's a really simple, idea. But it's good to hear that there's communication between your campaign and the Ossoff campaign, because you both need to win in November, and you bringing out voters in the 9th District in pockets that you may not normally see voters turn up for Democrats. If you get 6 or 7 extra voters in Banks County, that's 6 or 7 extra voters for Ossoff, and it's a razor-thin margin that he's likely to win by anyway.
That's the way we look at it. Is that I think both boats rise in a rising ocean, right?
Yeah.
And we think no one has started as early as we have, and certainly Ossoff's running a great campaign. We started in April. My 2 predecessors, or 3 predecessors, I've studied, and each one did a little better than the one before them, but none of them built out an organization. I've already got 8 full-time volunteers working on my organization. We've got 7 key social media sites up and running. We've got a website that's been in operation from day one. Nobody started this early, so we're going into 2026 with a head of steam. If we can also partner with Ossoff's campaign, bring that energy into it, I really think there's a way to win this election. I mean, I've studied it a lot as a banker, because I didn't want to go into something that was hopeless, and I found that not only not hopeless, that there is a clear path to victory. But it's going to take somebody running hard and running full time, and this is my full-time job. So
there you go. I'm going to take a quick break. I want to introduce everybody to you again real quick. His name is Nick Alex. He's running for Georgia's 9th Congressional District. The website is Alex2026.com. We'll catch up with him when we return on the Ron Show. Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast. With Nick Alex running for Georgia's 9th Congressional District, you focus a lot on affordability in your campaign messaging. Tell me what that looks like for folks in your district. Again, a disparate district. You've got suburban Atlanta, suburban Gainesville and Athens, and then you have rural Northeast Georgia. That can mean wildly different things depending on who you talk to.
It really does. And affordability is a many-splendored thing, and it's now become quite the rage. I've even heard Trump try to pronounce it correctly, as if it was some kind of new word that was just made up in the last 3 months. We've been talking about it since we began in our campaign. But affordability starts with my concern about grocery prices, household goods, and all of that's been affected by Trump tariffs, which are essentially taxes. And one of the things I'm disappointed about in my Congressman Andrew Clyde is that he and all of his peers have ceded that power to the executive branch. The power to tariff or tax is one that was reserved in the Constitution for the legislature, for Congress, and they've essentially ceded that power to Trump. So tariffs, which we've heard so much about, are a Trump-created problem, and he's now trying to fix the problem that he created. But in the meantime, he's inflated food prices, household good prices. And, despite saying that they're the contrary, he's actually made things worse. Or
home prices, too, when you consider the tariffs for lumber and labor with the immigration.
That's right. Much of our lumber comes from Canada, as you probably know. So all of it has been tariffed. A lot of the components to house construction come from, either foreign or mixed parts. So you're right. Tariffs have affected everything, in terms of housing, in terms of food. And so I want to see us take back in Congress. I want to be part of a Democratic wave that goes to Washington next fall, and we take back the power to tariff And we challenge those things all the way to the Supreme Court if we have to. Also in there is going to be things like, healthcare, and the Affordable Care Act subsidies going away are just the tip of the iceberg.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to take in the one big beautiful bill, which I call the one big, awful bill, is going to take $1.2 trillion out of the healthcare economy. If you look at the cuts to ACA, look at the cuts to Medicaid that will occur, that are built in, the projections that are built in to that bill, and transferring wealth from the poor to the rich, $1.2 trillion will come out of the healthcare economy. That's going to close clinics in our rural districts. It's going to close hospitals. You mentioned, there was a hospital in Livonia that recently had to exit all of its obstetrics and maternity services, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are 20 hospitals that I know of out of 71 rural hospitals that are already on kind of a watch list. They're not going to wait until they begin to lose serious money before they close. They'll just simply close early. That's going to affect the type of care and the quality of care we get in areas outside of Metro Atlanta. So whether I'm in 10 of my 12 counties are going to be affected by that, because they'll have rural facilities that'll be affected. But even if you're in Gainesville or if you're in North Gwinnett, you're going to see a crowding of and therefore a contention of services.
Yeah.
Right. Because people like me who live in Rabun County, I live in Clayton in Northeast Georgia, I'm going to have to drive 2 hours to Gainesville or to North Gwinnett. And you're going to find, more and more people having to do that. And then the cost of everything will go up because there's just going to be this contraction going on in the industry. So I'm very worried about healthcare over the next 5 to 10 years. And how many times have we heard the Trump administration say they're going to fix it? They've got a plan.
We've been waiting since 2015.
Oh, yeah. So I'm very concerned about the cost of that, and therefore, my sister recently, as an example, told me she's on ACA. She's 62 years old. She's on ACA. She just got a new premium for the same policy she had before. It was up 114%. She's got 3 years to go till Medicare, and she's wondering, can I make it without ACA?
It's a gamble, yeah.
Yeah, she's gonna roll dice that she can stay healthy for the next 3 years and go without health care. I mean, this is the difficult decision everyone's having to make. So there are ways to tackle this, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to have to be bipartisan. ACA was passed with a Democratic-only majority, but at least it was hoped to be the start of something that could become bipartisan over time. That hasn't happened, but I think people are going to see now that when we hit this wall that was created because of the one big beautiful bill, everybody's going to realize that we have to have a bipartisan solution. And I'm the kind of politician where I'm not a hell hath no fury kind of politician. I want to sit down with Republicans and work something out where we can all say that we're invested in this, because nobody wins if only one party wins. It's got to be a mutual decision.
That's a good sales pitch to make, even to a ruby red district such as yours. It's not good when one party wins. I mean, that's essentially what you have in China. That's essentially what you have in Russia. And right. I mean, I would invite people to talk to their citizens, but you're not allowed to be contrary to the government in that country. So it's an important caveat to make. All right. Well, listen, I only have about 60 seconds left. So what else can I impart some wisdom from you on as you're out there on the campaign trail working in Northeast Georgia? Yeah, I think the most important thing is for people to get it is to get active. I think we need a robust midterm election. Even if it goes against me, I'd rather have the 30% of the population that didn't vote, that are registered last time, get out and vote this time. To me, it's encouraging people to read, to inquire, come to my website, come to my social media sites, go to Andrew Clyde's. I think that's going to be who I run against. Although there's, he's got some competition on the Republican side. There are no primary contenders for the Democratic side, which I'm glad to say. So, but I'd love to see people get involved. I'd like to see people come out to my rallies, Republicans and Democrats and independents. And this is where I'm going to encourage folks that are considering making donations to political campaigns. It's always good to donate to a Nick Alex campaign because that helps John Ossoff as well without actually going to, like, you're going to use every penny of what you're getting for that campaign to get out the vote in Georgia's 9th Congressional District, which will benefit us off greatly. So we'll invite people to, again, go to nickalex2026.com. That's NICK-ALEX2026.com.
And let's see it. I'll finish with release the full Epstein files.
Oh, absolutely. Please. Yeah, unredacted. We understand that Dan Bongino's been working on redacting them since April. So, yeah, let's see the whole thing. I appreciate your time, Nick Alex, Georgia's 9th Congressional District. Good luck up there.
Thanks a lot, Ron. Appreciate it.
Hang tight. Second half of the Ron Show in minutes on Georgia Now. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.
From the heart of the city too busy to hate, a progressive voice making too much sense for corporate media's comfort. This is the Ron Show, where we the people come first. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Second half of this hour, I will be speaking with CBS News reporter Michael Wallace, who spoke with Dr. Mehmet Oz, who's out there doing publicity to remind folks that Medicare enrollment comes to an end this Sunday. I mean, if you're already enrolled in Medicare, you'll just keep getting what you're getting. But if there are cost savings to be had, you may want to check things out before you just let that roll over. Anyway, we'll talk with Michael Wallace about that and whatever impact the ACA subsidy situation had, the government shutdown, what kind of impact that had on folks who are trying to reach out to the 1-800-Medicare phone line, for example. There are even like state agencies you can call and get more information. We'll talk with Michael Wallace about that. First, the big news of the afternoon is that Donald Trump loves socialism and held a press conference touting his love for socialism. I mean, as long as it's sort of punctuated, I guess, if you will, icing on the cake, if you'd rather, from deep donors. Michael and Susan Dell announced a $6.25 billion donation to help fund or to add to the fund for the Trump baby accounts. You heard about this, right? Where there was to be $1,000 set aside, put in a fund for you, an IRA, for example, for all intents and purposes, and tied to an S&P index that if you contributed nothing to it over the 18 years, might be about worth $5,000. If you get your employer, by the way, can contribute up to $2,500 a year without incurring any tax issues. And other folks, including yourself, could contribute up to another $2,500 if you wish, a maximum $5,000 donated into that fund each year. I mean, it could net you like $300,000 or more if you've got those sort of extra funds to do that. It's an opportunity for those who are better off to take some taxpayer money and become even more better off with their offspring. Instead of just saying, no, we don't want that, we'll eschew that in deference to the plight of the less smart. No, that's not an option. So again, this is the haves benefiting exponentially more than the have-nots. But again, listen, $1,000 for your kid that becomes $5,000 when they turn 18, or hang on to it until you retire if you're able to, and let it become what it becomes when you are able to take it out without any penalty at 59. I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and say, don't take the money, ideologically speaking, because it's a regressive. No, take the money. If it's there for you, take the money. Joining me to discuss is Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute, Adam Michel. Adam, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate that.
Thanks for having me on.
So I was just talking to the audience and saying, like, don't look a gift horse in the mouth. $1,000 is $1,000. And even if it only becomes $5,000 or 18 years, I mean, it's $5,000 that you didn't have before. But I also sort of surmised that this is kind of one of those deals where it's socialism on its face, and the wealthier who get to contribute or have the ability to contribute up to $5,000 more per year are really going to benefit after 18 years or 59 years or however long they decide to wait to cash in on this. Am I reading this right?
Sort of.
All right, good. I'll take it sort of. That sounds like a D- or a C+. I'm graduating with that.
So you're right that the contribution from the government is just free money into these so-called Trump accounts. The problem with the way that they're being sold is that they are actually less tax advantaged than almost all of the other types of accounts we have in the tax system, from 529s, IRAs, even investing just outside of a tax advantage account can be a better use of your personal funds than a Trump account. The way they are designed, really the only use case is to get this free money from the government, and then any private donations that are made to them, like the ones that the Dells have announced today.
Yeah, talk to me about what the Dells did. Now, is this supposed to be on top of the $1,000 that was already coming from the government? How is that going to look?
Yeah, so the accounts allow private philanthropists to donate money into these accounts as long as it's sort of evenly distributed based on some broad criteria. Mm-hmm. And so the Dells have pledged $6 billion towards these accounts, which is a tremendous sum of money. And I believe it is for children who are not eligible for the $1,000. So the $1,000 is only going into these accounts for the next 4 years, and only for children born in 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028. And so the Dells contribution will be to children, I believe, up to 10 that are not eligible for that $1,000 from the government.
Okay, hold on. Explain this to me again. The Dell money goes to kids who are already born to start some accounts. Is that what I'm? Help me out there.
Correct. My understanding is it's seed money for families to start accounts that will not have the built-in $1,000 incentive that was passed as part of the reconciliation law this year.
So I guess somebody's doing the math to figure out how many kids that'll take care of who are born in the United States. I would assume parents who are also U.S. citizens, and up to a certain age. I guess they're going to figure out the math about what that age is.
Yes, yeah. They'll need to sort of back out what the dollar amount is, and I think there's some income requirements as well attached to this to the private donations. But the $1,000 that's part of that's coming from the federal government is for every American born in the next 4 years. And there actually is not a requirement that your parents are American citizens. Simply the beneficiary of the account has to have a valid Social Security number.
Okay. All right. So I came upon the Cato Institute in reaching out because I saw a quote from Romina Boccio, one of your coworkers, Director of Budget and Entitlement Policy there, who said that the Trump accounts are just a blatant giveaway and a way for the Trump administration in their hopes to leave a permanent mark by naming a rather useless savings account after the current president. Do you co-sign that?
Yes, I do. Romina and I are of the same mind here. The Republicans had sort of two paths in front of them during this reconciliation debate that became the one big beautiful bill. They could have chosen to do a streamlined, simple account that would actually be beneficial to most Americans, something called a universal savings account that has been proposed time and time again. But instead, they chose to go down this other path. That's to create this incredibly complicated, targeted investment account that is actually not a good use of private resources because it has tax penalties that are higher than the normal tax code. But because it has Trump's name on it, it has sort of gained the support of the administration. So it's a really unfortunate missed opportunity in my view.
So we're with Adam Michel, who's with the Cato Institute, a libertarian think tank here. Now, look at me being bipartisan or nonpartisan, I guess you can say in some respects here. He's the Director of Tax Policy Studies at the Cato Institute. Why do we tend to gravitate towards way more complicated than way more simple when it comes to big things like this? When we're talking about potentially funding college, like I've done the math, and a typical college education returns like a 4-to-1 return on investment if say the federal government were to fund it, but nobody wants to do that. That's too socialistic, to Denmark, to Norway, to Finland. We think the same thing when it comes to healthcare policy versus just a universal health. We've got the convoluted Affordable Care Act and all the other supplement. My next guest who's going to come on is going to talk about Medicare and all of its complications. Why is it here in the greatest country on the planet, we say, that we tend to gravitate towards these complicated scenarios that don't really net us positive results?
Yeah, that's a great question. I suspect that you and I would sort of fall in different directions on how to simplify things.
Well,
but in the case
put your gloves on. Let's get in the ring. No, I'm kidding.
But in the case of the tax code and all these special preferences, it's really just politics at its core. It's politicians like to give away special preferences to targeted interest groups and their donor businesses that ultimately lead to a cascade of each time they do a tax reform, they add something new to the list to target their preferred constituency. It's not just Trump accounts, but this piece of legislation that was passed in this summer also has no tax on tips and no tax on overtime and a new larger senior deduction. And each of these is targeted at a Trump constituency. And they're doing that at the expense of everyone else. Instead of removing all the junk from the tax code and using that higher revenue you would get to lower tax rates for everyone, they're picking winners and losers. And this is the sort of perennial story with the Washington swamp that unfortunately Trump campaigned on getting rid of, but is instead leaned into.
So, I mean, I would argue the tax on tips, the tax on overtime thing is not even making up for the wages that have been lost over time since we've seen wage stagnation for 3-4 decades now, while profits have been soaring, productivity's been soaring, and wages have not kept up with either one of those. So I don't know. I feel like that's not necessarily picking a winner or a loser. It's more like throwing a Band-Aid on a lost appendage. But yeah, I mean, you know, we came into the 20th century in essence after the Great Depression with a progressive tax code that has been whittled away at since 1981, and I would argue that the real winners that keep getting picked are the ones at the top of the tax bracket.
I mean, with generally speaking, I'm in favor of a low, broad-based, flat-rate tax, treating everyone the same. I think that the notion that we should be just increasing tax rates on businesses and higher income Americans sort of misses the broader point, and that every other large welfare state country across Europe doesn't fund their generous social benefits with just high taxes on the rich. Instead, they fund them with broad-based taxes, value-added taxes, higher income tax rates that reach all the way down to the middle of the income distribution, higher payroll taxes. And that's the reality of big government, is it's expensive and everyone has to pay for it. And I just wish that politicians would be honest with the American people. Right now, I do too. Right now, we're getting European levels of government at American prices, and that's why we have a deficit. And we should at least be honest with the American people that that's what's going on. Yeah,
you're right. We're not going to agree on that sort of measure when it comes to progressive taxation, because I liken it more to like homeowners insurance. I'm a realtor, so that's just something that's always on my mind there. If you have a nicer home, if you have more to insure, your insurance premium is going to be higher. If you are born into a higher tax bracket, live a higher quality of life, net more from living in this country, I believe that your tab for the insurance should be a little bit more than someone who's just getting by on a single wide and at the low level budget. But that's not what we came on to talk about. I wanted to learn more what the Cato Institute was thinking about these Trump baby accounts. To me, it just feels like one of those days where we needed to have some good news from the White House, and that's what they trotted out today. Something that kind of changes the narrative from all the other conversations that are being had at the national level.
Yeah, I think the good news is that private philanthropy works, and that the donations from the Dells is incredibly generous and something that should be celebrated. Yeah. I think it's unfortunate that it's being sort of funneled through this politically branded, broken on arrival account that could have been designed so much better.
I appreciate your time. Adam Michel, Director of Tax Policy Studies with the Cato Institute. Thanks for calling in on the Ron Show today, man. I appreciate you giving me some time.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And you as a listener should thank him too, because I was going to have to air the Trump press conference. Instead, we had good conversation. Back after this. These cabinet meetings are... Oh my God, they're just propaganda galore. I'm so grateful that most people don't watch cable TV news all day, specifically Fox News or OANN or Newsmax. By the way, another episode of Donald Trump Fell Asleep as Marco Rubio was going on and on and on about Trump and his efforts to end all these wars. We, by the way, found out again that the premature pronouncement that we're coming to an end of the Ukraine-Russian war because of a Trump plan, well, it would include Ukraine giving up big gobs of land, and Ukraine doesn't want to do that. Also, I want to know why or who thinks it's a good idea for Ukraine to have the size of its military in the immediate aftermath of being invaded, while also not being allowed to join NATO? No, those are, listen, I'm not Volodymyr Zelensky, but to me, those are non-starters. Then again, when you're formulating these policy ideas and you're getting the notes directly from Vladimir Putin's people, I guess that's what you're going to come up with. Here's another gem that came out of the cabinet hearing today, or cabinet meeting. This is VP Vance.
If you look at every affordability crisis that's confronting the American people today, it is traceable directly to a problem caused by Joe Biden and congressional Democrats. Why did homes get so unaffordable? Because we had 20 million illegal aliens in this country taking homes that ought by right to go to American citizens. No. Why did tax bills get so unaffordable? Because Democrats were raising taxes while congressional Republicans under the president's leadership, we're now cutting taxes. No. Why did food get so expensive? No. Because we printed trillions of dollars and threw it into green scams that made our agricultural economy suffer while Americans were paying higher prices for food. On every single one of those issues, Mr. President, I think we've made incredible progress.
He's made incredible progress at bullshitting the American people. That's what he's done. Let me start with this first point on housing. I'm a residential realtor. I can tell you, it's really hard for someone who is not a U.S. citizen to buy a house in this country. If you're undocumented, if you're here illegally, it's way harder. Let me pull from an audio conversation I heard on NPR with A. Martinez and Chloe East, an associate professor of economics at the University of Colorado, Denver, on this conversation last October in the throes of the 2024 election.
J.D. Vance is incorrect in his claim. While undocumented immigrants may play a small role in increasing housing prices in some areas, the majority of the reason that we're seeing increases in housing prices is other factors separate from undocumented immigration.
When asked, she actually explained what the main drivers of the rise in housing prices are. And I talked about that a good bit myself. You've got a slowdown in home building since the Great Recession. Like, it has not been advantageous for home builders, profitable for them to build houses. A lot of home builders went under during the Great Recession and never came back. I mean, that's one right off the top of my... Anyway, let me let the professor answer the question.
So the main factor is a slowdown in new residential construction.
That's what I said.
That has been happening since the Great Recession.
I said that.
Also, high interest rates that we've seen in the last few years have been causing people not to sell their home.
Yes.
There was also an increase in demand for housing during the pandemic because of an increase in remote work
from home.
That allowed people to work from home and want to have larger houses to do so.
Right.
And then finally, there's been an increase in more restrictive zoning laws across the country.
That is true.
And that has also led to
NIMBYs.
depressed residential construction and housing.
And then A. Martinez asked the great question. What kind of housing do immigrants live in?
So undocumented immigrants primarily rent homes rather than buy, partly because of limitations on buying because of their legal status or their limited legal status. Undocumented immigrants are also more likely to double up or live with extended family members or non-relatives.
That is true.
Compared to U.S.-born households. So in some sense, you could actually think about them as having lower demand for housing than an average U.S.-born household.
No, what drove, I mean, and you could argue that maybe that influx affected rent, but it's low-level rent in and of itself, and they mitigate the impact by coupling up or quadrupling up sometimes with some of their coworkers or their relatives to live in places, so they minimize the impact of anything. And by the way, this is where I also point out, because they're paying rent to somebody, they are paying property taxes, the property taxes that go towards indigent health care and educational expenses in the communities that they live in. So I think the term we should have for them is gracias, because they actually derive very little of that benefit in return, but they are contributing to it nonetheless. Let's see, the other 2 points that J.D. Vance brought up, he talked about taxes having gone up. They actually did not go up during the Biden presidency. That's not I don't understand where he's coming. And the food expenses. He blames that all on the Green New Deal. I mean, here's what causes our agricultural issues that do affect the cost of groceries at the store. By the way, the supply chain problem predated Joe Biden because that started as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic that began under the guy down the table. And not that I'm blaming him, I'm just saying, like, if you're going to trace it back to, like, when it actually began. But honestly, it is the instabilities in our climate as a result of not addressing climate change sooner that are impacting our farmers way more than any Green New Deal investments. Investments, by the way, bringing jobs to states like, I don't know, Georgia with its Republican governor and its Republican state legislature that is thrilled to see EV manufacturing plants and solar energy plants popping up throughout the state to bring jobs to communities that didn't have them before. And then meanwhile, how about he's sitting at the same damn table as the guy who sent $40 billion to Argentina and vowed to buy more Argentinian beef to help out the Argentinian beef economy, while the American beef growers are like, what the hell? Hey, if you're going to help somebody out, what about us? Hashtag America first, right? Michael Wallace joins us to discuss the closing of Medicare open enrollment at the end of the week. When the Ron Show returns on Georgia Now, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
Broadcasting 5 days a week to make common sense common again. This is The Ron Show.
Heard weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn. The replay 8 to 10 a.m. the following morning on Georgia Now. Apps on the App Store, Google Play, or at heargeorgianow.com. Michael Wallace, CBS News reporter, is here to talk about Medicare open enrollment. There's been so much attention paid to what's happening with potential ACA subsidies that it's been sort of under the radar that Medicare open enrollment is drawing to a close at the end of the week. Dr. Oz spoke earlier today about that. What sort of an update did he give?
Yeah, Dr. Mehmet Oz, who's the former TV star, now the administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I got to talk to him earlier today. He's basically reminding everybody this Sunday, December 7th, it's the deadline to enroll in Medicare or potentially lose out on some benefits. He says a lot of people have not logged on. They just take the assumption that, well, I'm already signed up, no need to log on and check, to see if anything needs changes. But he says a lot of things have changed this year. Maybe your doctor no longer is in Medicare or is in another plan, and you have to check on that. So I think there are 69 million Americans who are eligible for Medicare. So he's urging all of them to log on to Medicare.gov. Or if you're not very computer literate, you can call 1-800-MEDICARE, and somebody there will kind of help walk you through what your options are. And chances are you might be able to save something if you make some changes from last year.
Which is pretty important. By the way, here in Georgia, that number you can call the Georgia State Health Insurance Assistance Program at 866-552-4464. We'll include that in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. I was looking over some statistics earlier, though, that talked about how some of the Medicare Part programs are going up in price, like by 140%. For Medicare Part B since 2020, with all the other costs that folks have been bearing the brunt of going up in the last 4 to 5 years. Seeing an increase like that is pretty daunting. Did he speak to some of these increases that our folks are going to see in their Part B and Part D premiums potentially going up?
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's kind of par for the course, right? Just like private insurers, everybody's deductibles and premiums seem to be going up as well. I mean, Medicare Part A, which is hospital insurance, that deductible is going up. Medicare Part B, which is, the standard medical insurance, that's going up substantially. He said, though, that savings can be found depending on your, personal situation. There's a new $2,100 cap on yearly out-of-pocket prescription drug costs. That's up from $2,000, so that's up $100. But once you hit that cap, you don't pay for any covered drugs for the rest of the year. So you might be able to save in that regard. So again, his big message was log on, see what the options are, and you might be able to find some savings. And if you don't, you might be losing out on some savings you didn't even know you could have.
He did mention, by the way, you said that enrollment is actually kind of lagging. Is that did he literally say that?
Well, he didn't. No, I shouldn't. I paraphrase, but basically he said that more people need to check it out before the end of the week. He's concerned that a lot of people are passing up on potential savings because they're not logging on. They're just assuming, whatever I signed up for last year, I'll just go on with that and I'll be fine. But depending on some changes in the program or some changes to your own situation, that might not be true. You might have some savings coming your way. So he's urging everybody to get on there and check things out. Also, by the way, we should also mention that now Medicare can now negotiate with drug makers to lower prices too. So when it comes to some drug costs, you might have some savings coming your way there as well.
So set it and forget it, not the way to go when it comes to Medicare. Check it every year. And if you don't, you're kind of stuck with what you got for the next 12 months. Is that right?
That's exactly right. And I also asked Oz, there's been some studies recently, the National Council on Aging and others. They've done some surveys and found that less than half of Medicare enrollees really understand their coverage.
Yeah.
A lot of people. Yeah. Just for doing this story, I logged on to Medicare.gov and did some research this morning, and I was lost with some of this stuff. I mean,
imagine being 70,
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. I mean, listen, I'm no Einstein, but, I'm relatively computer savvy and I'm on this website bopping around, and some of this stuff is Greek to me. So I can't even imagine, to somebody who's a little more up in their years trying to make sense of all this stuff. So definitely, it's something you can't wait till the last minute for. Go on. And, he's stressed. He understands a lot of seniors probably, might not be too comfortable with a computer and the website. They can call that 800 Medicare number or the number in Georgia you mentioned, and they can get some human help. That would probably, help them out a little more.
Are there actually humans on the other end of this line? I wonder that, though. I mean, with AI, and you just wonder if you're dealing with a human being or a human being here in the United States.
Well, I did ask him that. They actually have 6,500 employees at Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Many of them do man the phones to take these calls. I also asked him, we had that government shutdown.
Yeah.
And a lot of those workers that answer those phones were furloughed.
Sure.
So they did eventually start bringing them back during the shutdown. They were working without pay to help out. Mm-hmm. But I asked them, did that shutdown put a kink in things here? Has it had some lagging impacts and maybe slowed things down for people who are, trying to get some help? But he insisted that they're all back up to full speed and they're ready to go for this final push this week. So we shall see.
Oh my God, what a toxic combination. Elderly people confused about their health care coverage and cost increases on a phone line after a healthy wait, getting to be placed with a human being who was furloughed and working for nothing for weeks. Oh, what a toxic combination those phone calls must be. I almost want to tap in to listen to some of those.
Yeah, I can imagine it's got to be pretty tough. But, that was his message today, was get on that website or get on that phone and make sure that you're getting all the savings that you're entitled to. As he put it, this is something that seniors are entitled to. They, most of them worked hard, all their lives hard for it. This is something that, you deserve to get this coverage, and hopefully at a lower price or at a reasonable price. And so, don't pass up on it.
And still kind of pricey, though, because these cost increases are overextending what the Social Security cost of living increases are, though.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, the math ain't mathing.
No, the math ain't mathing, that's for sure. I mean, that's certainly been the case. It's just something that Medicare and most of us who have work, insurance through our work, we're all seeing the same thing. These premiums going up, deductibles going up. It's just the nature of the beast.
Michael Wallace with CBS News joining us, talking about the closure of the Medicare open enrollment, which is it this weekend or is it Friday? What is the actual cutoff?
It's Sunday, December 7th is the cutoff. So, I asked him, I said, people who miss the deadline or, they hear about it too late. I mean, what happens to them? So he insisted that, if you do miss the deadline, you're going to get insured. They're not going to leave you out in the cold, but you might be stuck with what you had this year or previous years. And again, you might be missing out on some savings. Or if you do really need to change something, you might still be able to do it, but you're going to be on hold with one of those people for a long time. It could take a long time for you to get squared away. So he's really was driving the point home that, get on there preferably before the deadline on Sunday, sometime this week, and see what's available to you and what kind of savings you might be able to grab.
I feel as if the PR push from the government aspect wasn't really all that strong. Although then again, maybe I just don't watch the TV shows that the target audience is looking for. I don't know. Are they still airing Matlock or Murder She? I don't know. I really don't. But what sort of marketing push has it? There's you see a lot of the gotcha side hustle insurance advertising targeted towards seniors. But when it comes to actively encouraging folks to enroll in their Medicare for the upcoming 12-month period, I just don't see a whole lot of that.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I know I have seen what you've seen. I've seen those firms that say, call us and we'll help you.
Yeah.
Which, is your right to do if you want, but it's certainly not necessary. You don't have to pay somebody else. It's a free service from the government. You can call that number or go on the website and try to figure it out yourself. As far as directly from the government, I haven't seen a lot of that either. But again, like you said, I'm not watching a lot of Leave It to Beaver reruns, so I don't know. They may be running those, but you're right. It's not widely available across all media. So probably not a lot of Medicare deadline videos on TikTok these days, I would guess.
I learned this in the final few years of my my maternal grandmother. You go over and check grandma's mail a lot, see what's coming in the mail, and if she lets you or if she wants you to help out. Check her banks, because the stuff that they sign up for, unbeknownst to them, it's scary. And with healthcare coverage, man, there's a lot of gotcha out there and a lot of mixed messaging on purpose. The sort of stuff that should be illegal, but there just doesn't seem to be any sort of regulatory agency or appetite in that agency to deal with that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Ron. If you have an elderly, parent or grandparent or aunt or uncle or something, yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt to reach out to them and say, hey, are you squared away with Medicare? The deadline's this Sunday. Maybe you can offer to help, or not a bad idea at all with this thing fast approaching here on Sunday.
Plus, if she's really good at cooking, you might get a meal out of it. I'm just saying, just putting that out there.
A little something on the side for you.
I mean, why not? And, buttering her up right before the holidays, you may get another gift under the tree. I mean, you got to work this to your advantage, not just her Medicare advantage, but to your advantage as well. I'm just saying.
I like the way you think.
All right. Michael Wallace with CBS News. Thanks for the update and information about the closure of the Medicare open enrollment coming up this Sunday. I appreciate your time.
Sure, Ron, anytime.
And again, let me point out, by the way, Georgia here, they have their own state health insurance assistance offering here. It's called the Georgia State Health Insurance Assistance Program. You can call 1-866-552-4464. Again, that's 866-552-4464. Back after this, it's the Ron Show on Georgia Now, Progressive Voice via TuneIn and wherever you podcast. As I mentioned at the start of the show today, it's another election day here in the state of Georgia, and depending on where you live, you may not have a whole lot to vote for, but or anything to vote for. But throughout the state, there are various elections being. House District 106, Gwinnett County. Let me read to you. This ain't good. This is not good at all. Michelle Baruchman at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Reporting Democrats Akbar Ali and Marcus Cole. Akbar looks like he's 19. How old is he? Competing to represent House District 106, which covers portions of Lawrenceville and Snellville. Top two vote getters in the special election a month earlier, but neither received the majority to win outright. This is where, y'all, we got to do ranked choice. Got to get this right, because this is ridiculous. Let me read further. Well, first, the winner will replace former state representative Shelley Hutchinson, who resigned over the summer to care for a family member. Special elections, and particularly runoffs, can be hard to attract voters in November. The candidates were boosted by statewide races for the Public Service Commission, which regulates utilities in Georgia. So there was a healthy turnout for this, not for this race, but that race at the PSD enabled more folks to participate in this race. Today, few residents braved the rainy, cold weather to vote, Baruchman reports. As of lunchtime, one election manager said her precinct had only seen 4 voters. Just 6 ballots were cast at another precinct. I mean, listen, as of time for this to air, On Tuesday, if you're listening Wednesday morning, the election's over. Don't go. But right now, if you're still listening on Tuesday, this is so confusing. Get there and vote before 7 o'clock. Ali endorsed by Hutchinson, who is vacating the post, former Governor Roy Barnes, and House Democratic Whip Sam Park. That is the young one, Akbar Ali, endorsed by Hutchinson, Governor Barnes, and House Democratic Whip Sam Park. Several state lawmakers as well and local elected officials. Cole, meanwhile, endorsed by State Senator Nikki Merritt and Gwinnett Solicitor General Lisa Marie Bristol. Again, 2 precincts, apparently, by lunchtime, 10 total votes submitted. We got to talk about ranked choice, y'all. We really need to talk about ranked choice. And I had reached out to talk with Jane Branscombe, who wrote this piece in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution back on November 21st. She said she was a little shy, didn't want to do it. And I understand. She's with the organization Better Ballot Georgia. And she wrote that this year's November 4th general election left 53 municipal, county, and legislative races across Georgia undecided, according to the nonpartisan website branch.vote. Voters are returning to the polls today for those runoffs. She said if districts could use ranked choice voting, citizens in these areas would have fulfilled their civic duty already, and the winner with the majority support would be known. Our word, quote, democracy comes from the Greek word for, quote, the people rule, according to Britannica. Merriam-Webster gives the, quote, rule of the majority as a second definition, which makes sense if you allow, quote, the people to mean, at a bare minimum, half of them plus one, more of the people than not, a majority. Branscombe writes, I believe our elections should stick to that minimum standard. She continues, some Georgia municipalities, per their charters and in compliance with state law, Decatur and Holly Springs, for example, define the winner in local elections as the person with the most votes. This is called a plurality, and it is not the same as a majority. That may be, quote, a distinction without a difference in races with only 1 or 2 candidates, and sometimes in a race with several candidates, but one strong favorite. Where it violates majority rule is when 3, 4, or more candidates split the vote such that no one receives half plus one, she writes. A winner with, say, 35% or even 45% of the votes is backed by some people, not, quote, the people. She said, I would like to see jurisdictions with plurality voting switch to majority rule, but perhaps the reason they opted for plurality was to avoid the costly and poorly attended separate runoffs needed in majority rule when no candidate passes 50%. She argues a better way to solve that is instant runoff voting, also called ranked choice voting. It's really not that complicated. She said this process simply asks voters to rank the candidates in order of preference when they go to the polls on Election Day, effectively casting their runoff vote at the same time they cast their first vote. Seems simple, right? She said this saves loads of money and time for taxpayers and voters, election staff and candidates. Even more importantly, it better reflects the will of the majority for at least 3 reasons. As already noted, it avoids the huge drop in turnout for separate runoffs, which can mean only a small fraction of voters eventually choose the winner. Additionally, Jane writes, it gives voice to supporters of less popular candidates whose second choice might not have made it to the runoff. And third, it eliminates the, quote, spoiler effect, so that people can truly vote their conscience while not undermining their second choice. In 2021, Branscombe writes, the Georgia legislature acknowledged the benefits of instant runoff voting and adopted it for Georgia's military and overseas voters. Those citizens now get to participate fully in elections without the time lag of a separate mailed runoff. We have precedent, experience, and positive feedback for this approach right here in our state, Branscombe writes. There are cities and counties across Georgia that have passed resolutions in support of instant runoff voting. Holly Springs, Atlanta, DeKalb County, for example. She said, I urge state lawmakers to pass legislation enabling them to try it. We can look to other parts of the country for experience, but even better, let us see for ourselves what quicker and more representative results, lower cost and less burden on voters and campaigns look like. Hear, Jane Branscombe. Thank you for that. I'll include that in the show notes at ronshowetl.com. Finally, let me close with a personal plea, if you don't mind. And it's not like super personal, but it means a lot to me. I've actually joined forces in recent months with Lost and Found Youth. I work with them in a capacity where I help herd volunteers. And I hope that by speaking a little bit more about this, I'll have more volunteers to herd. Lost and Found Youth is a local Atlanta nonprofit that seeks out, literally, they hit the streets 3 days a week with the Street Reach team. They seek out unhoused LGBTQI plus youth between the ages of 18 and 25. And in doing so, they go out there with packets of like snack bars and bottled water, toiletry items and whatnot for any of the unhoused population that they run into, whether LGBTQI plus or not, whether 18 to 25 or not. And, make sure that everybody that they communicate with gets a little something, snack bar, protein bar, bottle of water, toiletry items. But they are specifically out there looking for the unhoused LGBTQI plus youth between the ages of 18 and 25. And can I just tell you, like, I was never unhoused. Well, I mean, I guess you could say I was at some point in time. Like, I had to couch surf from time to time between, like, apartments or when school would be out at UGA and I stayed in student housing, but also had a job at the Harris Teeter in Athens at the time. I needed to stay somewhere, right? So it's impactful. I can't imagine what it's like to not know when you wake up if you're going to get to lay your head down where you woke up, if you have to take all of your stuff with you, and then the anxiety of wondering where you're going to, put down for the night the next place. And in weather like this, it's unfathomable. But it is something that disproportionately affects the LGBTQI plus community in the teen to early 20s, because the whole coming out process it's not a walk in the park for all families. It's not easy for the LGBTQI plus in all families to deal with. And the trans community disproportionately affected. Anyway, Lost and Found Youth seeks these folks out. They may not convince them right away, but inevitably the hope is they are convinced to come into the program. They are provided up to 90 days of housing, where they are also given the opportunity to continue getting their education if that's what they're doing. That is a requirement to either be obtaining an education or have employment or be seeking employment. Even if they can't get employment, Lost and Found Youth offers employment because they run a thrift shop. That's how a good chunk of their funding comes in. Again, it's Giving Tuesday, so I'll remind you, lnfy.org if you'd like to contribute on this Giving Tuesday to this organization that, again, does so much for the unhoused population in the LGBTQI plus community between the ages of 18 and 25 here in Metro Atlanta. So in that 90-day program, they could be working at the thrift shop. They could be working somewhere else. They come in, they work through the program. 60% of the money that they make while working is set aside in a fund so that when the 90-day program is over for them, they have money set aside for first and last month's rent or pad split or whatever it is that they need to get themselves established. The minute they come into the program, they're given a voucher to go to the Lost and Found thrift shop to get any other items that they might need to stay where they're going to stay, whether it's a pillow, a pillowcase, some clothing, because they've been living on the streets. They may not have everything that they need: underwear, clothing, shoes, necessities, right? Upon completing the 90-day program, not only do they get the money that was set aside for them, they also get another voucher to shop at Lost and Found Youth to get whatever that they might need for whatever that they're moving into, whether it's their own apartment or a roommate situation, whatever it is. That voucher gets set. So they're helped with the voucher coming in. They're helped with the voucher going out. The money that they make while they're there is set aside for them, 60% of it, so it's not squandered, so that it's a good chunk of money that goes towards reestablishing housing for those unhoused individuals. It is a fantastic organization. I've worked with them for months now. They are wonderful human beings who are doing God's work, doing yeoman's work to take care of some of Metro Atlanta's most forgotten, most vulnerable. And Atlanta being a large city in the South, Atlanta is a magnet for kids to come who want to come here to discover themselves, to be themselves, to express themselves in ways. And because it's a large city, it's fraught with peril. It's fraught with opportunities to fall short. And it's also an expensive place to live. Boy, is it an expensive place to live. So again, I'm going to ask you on this Giving Tuesday, if you're thinking about any organization to ingratiate some of your hard-earned money with, I'm going to ask you, if you will, to consider Lost and Found Youth. You can get more information about them at lnfy.org. I will also include that in the show notes at ronchoatl.com and on today's podcast. Again, lnfy.org, Lost and Found Youth, aiding the unhoused Atlanta population that are LGBTQI plus between the ages of 18 to 25. All right, that's my spiel. Thank you for allowing me to make it. lnfy.org for more information. That'll do it for today's Ron Show. I want to thank Nick Alex, running for Congress in Georgia's 9th Congressional District, out there to win that thing, but also to be on the ballot to bring voters out to help the up-ballot candidates, too. So consider giving to Nick Alex. He'll spend every penny on his campaign to help him and John Ossoff win in 2026. Also want to thank Michael Wallace from CBS News to discuss Medicare's open enrollment closing at the end of the week. Adam Michelle from the Cato Institute to talk about the Trump baby accounts. And you for listening. Weekdays 4 to 6 p.m. on Georgia Now, 8 to 10 a.m. The replay the following morning, 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn or wherever you podcast.